And welcome back to Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. Joining me, Juan Zarate. Juan, good to see you again.
Bob, great to see you.
Major development in Iraq. The U.S. has obviously gone from there now, and it seems that in our place, here come the terrorists.
Yeah, the successor to al-Qaeda in Iraq is on the march, Bob, and they now control Iraq's second largest city, Mosul. They've taken over the banks. They've taken over major security depots. They are on the march in Iraq. Today, they've taken over Tikrit, Saddam Hussein's hometown, and they control a wide swath of territory to include Fallujah, Al-Anbar, and then also eastern parts of Syria. And so they are remaking the map. They have a safe haven, and now they have money, materiel, and momentum.
Let's talk about the geography. So this group, which is referred to as ISIS or ISIL, very radical, even too radical for al-Qaeda. They now, in a sense, have kind of carved out their own country.
Right. Their own map and their own vision of the territory actually doesn't include the border between Syria and Iraq. It includes the territory that they're currently occupying in eastern and a bit of northern and southern Syria, and then also western parts of Iraq and to the north as well. And so their vision is to control this territory. And as you said, ISIL, sometimes called ISIS, is a brutal group, so much so that they're now in conflict with al-Qaeda. But no mistake about this. These are bad guys. These are extreme of the extreme, and they are routing the Iraqis, so much so that you now have a real question of whether or not the Iraqi state can even control their advance and their march. And keep in mind, they haven't been all that far from Baghdad. So this is really the worst case scenario you can imagine from a counterterrorism perspective. Bad guys controlling major cities in Iraq.
Give me some context. Let's go back to the insurgency in Iraq, and that at that time was al-Qaeda in Iraq. This is a bigger threat, more substantive threat? How would you describe it?
Well, it's a bigger threat in part because of the dynamics in Iraq itself. The politics have devolved. Maliki has not been able to assuage the Sunni tribes and the populace. He hasn't been able to put together government even after his electoral victory. And so the politics are worse, the sectarianism is worse, and this group, ISIL, has grown in strength. They've controlled territory, they've not been pushed out of places like Fallujah, and they have demonstrated that they can be an effective fighting force in Syria. Interestingly, Bob, and we've talked about this, they've also started to make accommodations with Assad. So Assad realizes this is a powerful force, and he's allowed them in some ways to operate. And so they have a virtual safe haven, and now they are trying to expand their space in Iraq and also in Syria.
So this is a group that essentially went to Syria to try to win territory there, and now they figured out that what's right behind them is maybe more accessible, and it's an operating base for them.
Well, they've been fighting both battles at once, Bob. They've been using the free flow of people and weapons across the border to their advantage. They've been trying to gain territory momentum in Iraq, which they've been doing. They've been trying to be a major player in Syria, which they are. And they've been brutal, they've been effective, and they're growing in strength. And this is a real problem. Interestingly, they're not technically al-Qaeda anymore. They're at war with al-Qaeda in parts in Syria, but they are still the remnants of al-Qaeda in Iraq, and these are bad guys, still led by al-Baghdadi, who succeeded Zarate.
A couple of real quick questions here. How much trouble is the Maliki government in? Could this group make even greater gains? Is he in any kind of danger?
Well, he's in danger in part because he's not been able to sway the Sunni tribes and population to his side. He hasn't been able to exit these militants out of places like Fallujah in the west. And he has to figure out, how do you dislodge them from Mosul? You now have over 150,000 civilians fleeing. You have no security services there anymore. The Iraqi state and security service has been routed in their second largest city. This is dramatic, and it's a dramatic moment for him and the Iraqi population. And you really have to ask the question, are we watching the implosion of the Iraqi state?
And last question, then we got to wrap this up. But right now, this is a threat to Iraq. It's a threat in places to Syria. Is ISIS a threat to us? What kind of Western reach does it have?
This group, like other al-Qaeda groups, has embedded in their minds and in their program the global jihadi DNA. That is, they want to attack the West. They're going to do what they need to establish themselves locally, but they want to attack the West. This is a real problem, by the way, for the Kurds. And so you watch this. The Peshmerga, the fighting force from Kurdistan, will get involved. The Turks are now going to have to pay attention to this and might have to start fighting forces that they once supported. The Jordanians are worried. The Americans are going to have to get involved in some way. But obviously, this administration does not want to put boots back on the ground in Iraq. That would be the last thing that they do.
Have to leave it there. One, very interesting and also very troubling.
Absolutely.
One we'll watch. And thank you for watching Flashpoints. I'm Bob Orr. We'll see you next time.